And I do want to talk about your upcoming conversation with David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, who you spoke to amid some of the market turmoil that we saw last week. What was his take on it, and potentially how much was stemming from uncertainty around the Fed and around what we're seeing in the U.S. economy?
Well, he obviously recognizes there's going to be some turmoil in the market for a while. He said that in the interview, which will air tomorrow night. David's been the CEO for about 5 years. I've known him for a long time. I tried to recruit him to come to Carlyle about 3 or 4 different times. I failed every time. Very talented person. He obviously had some turmoil early on in some of the parts of what he was doing, but he's now seemed to be in really strong shape. The Goldman stock is doing quite well. The performance is very, I'd say, strong. And he is worried about the debt around the world, the amount of debt the U.S. government has, the amount of debt consumers have, the amount of debt that a lot of countries have. So that's one of his concerns. But generally, he doesn't see a recession or a depression coming anytime soon.
You didn't get him, but you did get Harvey Schwartz, so you didn't do too badly in terms of recruitment. I am concerned, though, about just the divergence that we're seeing with respect to what CEOs are saying, and then some of the data that's coming out that just seems kind of messy. From your perspective, from your vantage point as an interviewer of David Solomon and all of these other behemoths in the finance industry, but also overseeing and really understanding consumer dynamics, where are we in this pendulum of weakening but not yet weak?
I don't think most people think we're heading into a recession. Now, obviously, we have recessions typically every 7 years in the U.S. economy. We haven't had one for a while, a real recession. So it wouldn't be a shock if there was a recession, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. The economic data is still pretty good. Most people expect the interest rates to be lowered, probably, I suspect, in September. And I think when that happens, I think the market will respond favorably.
Do you think that it would be prudent for the Fed to cut by 50 basis points?
I would think it's prudent for them to cut back interest rates, whether it's 25 or 50, I will leave to the Fed. But I think it's unlikely that the Fed will say, because of the election season, we won't do it. In other words, I used to think that the Fed would not do any cutting before the election. But I now think the signs are so strong that they should do so, that I think that they will do a cut of 25 or 50 basis points in September. And that's what David Solomon thought as well.
And in the meantime, as the market tries to figure that out, it's been whipsawed back and forth, and probably a good example of who to talk to in one of those moments is the legendary energy trader John Arnold, who you speak with for an upcoming episode of Bloomberg Wealth. And you talked about this idea of his trading strategy. I just wonder if any of that is kind of applicable to today as people try to trade these markets and really grasp for what the direction may be.
Well, John Arnold, for those who don't know, was a legendary trader at Enron, then later started his own company, and he had rates of return that were over 100% a year. And he did what most people don't do. He retired. He just retired to give away his money and work with his wife on a philanthropy. A very impressive person. He's now on the Meta board, and he's helping Meta decide what to do with the energy needs for artificial intelligence, because his expertise is energy trading. A very impressive person. I would say that the volatility in the energy markets will probably abate a bit sometime soon. But he's not in energy trading right now for third parties. He may trade for his own account. We don't know what he's really doing. But he's mostly spending time on philanthropy. I would say he's a very impressive young man. He became a multi-billionaire well before the age of 40.
What's the advice on the energy infrastructure to power these massive data centers because of AI?
There's no doubt that AI requires a lot of energy, and there's a lot of concern about whether that's going to be good for the environment or not. And most of the big tech companies are now focused on that, and I think rightly so. But I think that's a problem that will be solved in time. And clearly, alternative energy will help mitigate the problem, I suspect. Right now, I think one of the biggest things that people are focused on is who's going to be the next president of the United States. So, as you know, most people thought that there's a pretty good chance that Donald Trump would win, because running against Joe Biden looked like he was going to win. Many people thought that. Now it's a jump ball. Nobody really knows who's going to win. And I think we're going to see a lot of turmoil in the markets till the markets really say, yes, X or Y is going to be president of the United States.
You just sat down with David Solomon. You just sat down with John Arnold. What are they thinking about U.S. politics right now?
Well, they try to avoid it, just like I try to avoid it, too. But they may be more involved in politics than I am. I don't get involved in giving money to any politicians, but I do.
You don't give money, but you talk to everyone.
I talk to them all. In fact, I have a book coming out in a couple of weeks on the presidency. I interviewed Donald Trump for the book, and I interviewed Joe Biden for the book. and it's about the presidency and the importance of it. And it's called the highest calling. Now, I used to say that private equity was the highest calling of mankind, but I had to admit that the presidency is probably a higher calling than private equity. But it's very close.
I love that you say that you try to stay away from it, but you were the one who brought it up, and so we have to go there. There is a real question here about how much turmoil there actually will be, and some people are saying, I'm not going to get into it, and it's not going to be that significant. Where do you see the balance of risks? I mean, what is the Harris trade?
Well, I think right now the markets are uncertain as to who's likely to be president. It's clear to me that she's gotten much more support than people thought she would have gotten, because remember, as vice president, she wasn't as visible figure as some other vice presidents have been, and the Biden people thought that only Biden could get elected. Now they recognize that she can probably get elected. I think President Trump has not yet figured out exactly how to attack her, and I think their campaign is a little uncertain, but he's a smart man. He's gotten elected before, and I think it's going to be a pretty close election either way.
Do you sleep, David?
I'm sorry?
Do you sleep?
About 5 hours a night, but that's enough.